Every single day, somewhere in the world, a missile leaves a factory. A fighter jet rolls off an assembly line. A government signs another billion-dollar defense contract. An investor watches defense stocks climb. And somewhere else, a family packs whatever they can carry. Children run from falling bombs. Hospitals fill beyond capacity. Entire cities fall silent. War creates two completely different worlds. For one, it is unimaginable suffering. For the other, it can become an extraordinary business. Now here's the disturbing part. The companies manufacturing the weapons, the banks financing the projects, the politicians approving the budgets, the scientists designing the next generation of military technology. Most of them may never step onto a battlefield, yet their decisions shape wars that millions of ordinary people are forced to live through. This isn't a story about villains secretly controlling the world. It is far more complicated than that. It is about a system so powerful that over 60 years ago, even a 5-star general, a war hero, and the President of the United States warned humanity about it. He called it the military-industrial complex. And today, his warning may matter more than ever. January 17, 1961, Washington, D.C. Television sets across America broadcast one final speech from President Dwight D. Eisenhower. To most people, it looked like an ordinary farewell address, but history would remember it very differently. Eisenhower wasn't an academic. He wasn't a journalist. He wasn't an activist criticizing the military. He had spent his life commanding it as Supreme Commander of the Allied forces during World War II. He helped defeat Nazi Germany. He understood war better than almost anyone alive. If anyone had earned the right to celebrate military power, it was him. Instead, he issued a warning. One sentence, just 20 words that would echo across generations. We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence by the military-industrial complex. Imagine hearing that in 1961. The Cold War had divided the world. The Soviet Union possessed nuclear weapons. America feared communist expansion. People expected Eisenhower to demand an even stronger military. Instead, he warned Americans that something entirely different could become dangerous. Not an enemy overseas, but a relationship at home. A relationship between government, the armed forces, and private defense industries. The phrase sounds mysterious, almost like the title of a conspiracy novel, but its meaning is surprisingly simple. Imagine a triangle. At one corner, the military. Its mission is straightforward. Protect the nation, prepare for threats, stay ahead of potential enemies. At another corner, the government. It decides military budgets, approves new weapons, signs defense contracts, shapes foreign policy. And at the third corner, private companies. Some build fighter jets, others manufacture missiles. Some design submarines, others create satellites, cyber security systems, artificial intelligence, military drones, radar, communication networks, even space technology. Now connect all three. The military identifies new threats, governments approve funding, companies build solutions, those companies employ millions of people, universities conduct research, factories expand production, engineers develop new technologies, workers earn salaries, cities depend on defense manufacturing, politicians promise to protect those jobs. Then the military identifies the next threat. The cycle begins again. Nothing about this process is automatically wrong. Every country has the right and the responsibility to defend itself. Without strong defense, nations become vulnerable. So why did Eisenhower sound concerned? because over time the system can become so economically important that questioning military spending becomes politically difficult. When billions of dollars, entire industries, and millions of jobs depend on defense contracts, who wants those contracts to disappear? Here is something most people never think about. Imagine opening the largest business in your city. Who would you want as your customer? Someone who always pays on time, never goes bankrupt, places enormous orders, keeps coming back. For defense companies, that customer already exists. It is called the government. Unlike ordinary businesses, defense companies don't usually sell products to everyday consumers. Their primary customer is the state. The governments don't buy one fighter jet, they buy fleets. They don't purchase a handful of missiles, they purchase thousands. They don't invest for 1 year. Some military programs continue for decades. A modern fighter aircraft isn't just sold once. It requires maintenance, software updates, pilot training, replacement parts, technical support, upgrades, new weapons integration. Over 30 or 40 years, the lifetime cost of maintaining that aircraft can become many times greater than its original purchase price. Selling the aircraft is often only the beginning. Imagine owning a company whose biggest clients signs contracts lasting decades. That creates something every business dreams about: predictable revenue, long-term planning, continuous investment, steady growth. Now multiply that across hundreds of defense programs around the world. Suddenly, you are looking at one of the largest industries on earth. When the Cold War ended, many believed military spending would finally decline. After all, the Soviet Union had collapsed. Perhaps the age of global conflict was ending. Instead, history surprised everyone. The Gulf War, the Balkan conflicts, the war on terror, Afghanistan, Iraq, the rise of ISIS, Russia's invasion of Ukraine, growing tensions in the Indo-Pacific, cyber warfare, artificial intelligence, hypersonic missiles, space-based defense. Every new challenge created another reason to modernize militaries, and every modernization program meant new contracts, new factories, new technologies, new investments. Today, the global defense industry is larger, more technologically advanced, and more interconnected than at any point in human history, which raises a fascinating question. If wars create enormous business opportunities, who exactly benefits? Is it only defense companies, or does the money travel much further than most of us realize? Because once you begin following the money, you discover a network far larger than anyone imagines. Imagine you are the CEO of a defense company. You don't sell smartphones. You don't manufacture cars. You don't compete for holiday shoppers. Your customer is something far bigger: entire governments. When a nation decides to strengthen its military, it doesn't buy one or two pieces of equipment. It places contracts worth billions of dollars, a new fleet of fighter jets, advanced missile defense systems, warships, combat drones, cybersecurity, infrastructure, military satellites, artificial intelligence platforms, secure communication networks, and unlike consumer products, these aren't one-time purchases. A fighter aircraft isn't simply delivered and forgotten. It requires decades of maintenance, software upgrades, replacement engines, new radar systems, weapons integration, pilot training, technical support. Every upgrade becomes another contract. Every contract creates another revenue stream. This is why the defense industry doesn't think in months, it thinks in decades. One successful military program can support thousands of jobs and generate income for 30 or 40 years. That is why defense companies invest enormous resources into research, innovation, and long-term partnerships, not because war is inevitable, but because governments always prepare for the possibility that it might be. Now imagine a government announces a new defense program worth $10 billion. Where does that money actually go? Most people picture one giant company collecting the entire contract. Reality is far more complex. One company builds the aircraft, another supplies the engines, another develops the radar, another manufactures advanced sensors. Hundreds of smaller businesses produce specialized components. Universities receive research grants. Technology startups develop artificial intelligence. Software companies write mission control systems. Steel manufacturers supply raw materials. Electronics companies produce microchips. Logistics firms transport equipment across continents. Insurance companies assess risk. Banks provide financing. Suddenly, one defense contract begins supporting an entire economic ecosystem. Thousands of businesses, hundreds of thousands of workers, entire cities, sometimes even entire regions become economically dependent on military production. And that is where things become politically complicated. Imagine a factory employing 15,000 people. If that contract disappears, those jobs disappear too. Local restaurants lose customers, schools lose funding, housing markets decline, small businesses suffer. Now imagine you are the elected representative of that district. Would you vote to cancel the program, or would you fight to protect those jobs? National security and local economics often become deeply intertwined. Now let's explore one of the most debated aspects of the military-industrial complex. It is known simply as the revolving door. Picture this: a 4-star general retires after 35 years of military service. Few people understand national defense better than they do. Months later, a major defense company offers them a senior advisory position. Should they accept? Supporters say absolutely. After all, who better understands military needs than someone who spent an entire career protecting their country? Their expertise can improve technology, strengthen defense planning, and help companies build equipment that actually meets military requirements. Critics see the same situation differently. They worry that close relationships between senior officials and private contractors could create conflict of interest, or at least the appearance of them. Many democracies have responded with ethics rules, disclosure requirements, and cooling off periods before former officials can join certain industries. Those safeguards are designed to protect public trust. Because when national security is involved, trust matters. It is important to remember that moving between public service and private industry is not automatically improper. The real question is whether transparent rules and oversight are strong enough to ensure that public decisions remain guided by the national interest. Now let's talk about a word that often makes headlines: lobbying. The moment people hear it, many imagine secret deals, smoke-filled rooms, and hidden conspiracies. Reality is usually far less dramatic. In most democracies, lobbying is legal. Technology companies do it. Healthcare companies do it. Agricultural organizations do it. Environmental groups do it. Labor unions do it. And yes, defense companies do it too. They meet lawmakers, present technical information, discuss future security challenges, advocate for funding priorities. Supporters argue this is essential. Modern defense technology is incredibly complex. Elected officials often rely on technical experts to understand emerging threats. Critics respond that organizations with greater financial resources naturally have greater access to policymakers. This doesn't automatically determine government decisions, but it raises an important democratic question. How do we ensure that policies are driven by the country's long-term security needs, rather than by commercial interest? There isn't a simple answer. Different countries adopt different transparency rules, but the question remains relevant everywhere. Now imagine breaking news flashes across the world. A missile strike, a border conflict, a naval confrontation. Financial markets respond within minutes. Oil prices may rise, currencies fluctuate, shipping companies react, insurance costs change, and often defense stocks attract increased investor attention. Why? Because investors expect governments facing heightened security risk to spend more on defense. More spending can mean more contracts. More contracts can mean higher expected revenues. And higher expected revenues often influence stock prices. It is important to understand what this does and does not mean. Markets responding to geopolitical events does not prove that wars are started for corporate profit. History shows that wars emerge from complex combinations of politics, ideology, territorial disputes, historical grievances, security concerns, and strategic calculations. Economic incentives are part of the broader picture, not the whole picture. Confusing correlation with causation oversimplifies an extraordinarily complex reality. So now we understand the machine. Governments seek security, militaries seek preparedness, industries seek contracts, workers seek stable jobs, investors seek returns, politicians seek public confidence. Each actor follows its own incentives individually. Most of those incentives are legitimate, but together they create one of the most powerful systems ever built. Which brings us to the final question. Has the military-industrial complex become so influential that President Eisenhower's warning is more relevant today than it was in 1961? To answer that, we have to step back, look at the world as it exists today, and ask perhaps the most difficult questions of all. Can humanity ever build a world where peace becomes more profitable than war? Take a step back. Forget individual countries, forget politics, forget headlines. Look at the world as a whole. The Cold War ended more than 30 years ago. Many believed humanity had reached a turning point. The Berlin Wall had fallen. The Soviet Union collapsed. There was hope that military spending would gradually decline. Instead, something very different happened. Today, global military spending is higher than at any other point in recorded history. The United States continues investing in next-generation aircraft, submarines, artificial intelligence, and missile defense. China is rapidly modernizing its armed forces and expanding its naval capabilities. India is strengthening its indigenous defense manufacturing while upgrading its military across land, sea, air, cyber, and space domains. European nations have increased defense spending in response to changing security conditions. Japan has announced historic increases in military investment. Across the Middle East, countries continue purchasing advanced fighter aircraft, missile defense systems, surveillance technologies, and drones. Every nation has its own reasons. Some fear invasion, some seek deterrence, some want technological superiority, others simply don't want to be left behind. Because in international politics, no country wants to be the only one that stopped preparing. Here is one of the greatest paradoxes in world politics. Imagine your neighbor installs high security gates, security cameras, guard dogs, and stronger locks. You might believe they are simply protecting themselves. Or you might begin wondering what they know that you don't. So you install cameras too. Then they upgrade again, you respond. Before long, both of you are spending enormous amounts of money. Even though neither of you originally intended conflict, political scientists call this the security dilemma. One country's efforts to increase its own security can unintentionally make other countries feel less secure. Those countries respond by strengthening their own militaries. The cycle repeats. This doesn't necessarily happen because leaders want war. Sometimes it happens because every side believes it is preparing to prevent one. And that is one of the central tragedies of international relations. Actions taken in the name of peace can sometimes increase the risk of future confrontation. Now let's return to the question we asked at the very beginning. Who really profits from war? Defense companies certainly earn revenue. Technology firms developing cybersecurity, satellites, artificial intelligence, and military software may receive new contracts. Construction companies often participate in rebuilding after conflicts. Shipping firms, logistic providers, raw material suppliers, research laboratories, universities, thousands of businesses become connected to the enormous ecosystem surrounding national defense. But here is something equally important. History also shows that many military innovations eventually transformed civilian life. The internet, GPS, weather satellites, jet aviation, emergency medicine, countless technologies used every day were accelerated by military research. That doesn't justify war, but it reminds us that history is rarely simple. Progress and tragedy have often advanced side by side, which makes this issue incredibly difficult. How do societies encourage innovation without depending upon conflict? How do nations remain secure without fueling endless competition? How do democracies balance military preparedness with public accountability? These are questions every generation must answer for itself. Let's go back one final time to January 17, 1961. President Dwight D. Eisenhower wasn't asking America to weaken its military. He knew better than anyone why nations require strong defenses. His warning was something much deeper. He believed that whenever enormous power, money, technology, politics, and national security become tightly connected, citizens must remain informed. Not suspicious of everything, not cynical about every decision, but informed enough to ask difficult questions. Who benefits? Who decides? Who pays? Who is held accountable? Because democracy doesn't become stronger when people stop asking questions. It becomes stronger when they ask better ones. Perhaps the military-industrial complex isn't a secret organization. It isn't a hidden government. It isn't a single corporation controlling the world. It is something much more powerful. A system, a network of governments, industries, scientists, investors, workers, politicians, and military institutions, all responding to their own incentives. Most of those incentives are legitimate. Governments genuinely want security. Engineers genuinely want innovation. Workers genuinely want stable jobs. Companies genuinely seek profits. Investors seek returns. Military leaders seek preparedness. None of these goals are inherently wrong, but when they intersect, they create one of the most influential economic and political ecosystems on earth. Understanding that system doesn't require believing in conspiracies. It requires understanding incentives. Because history has shown us something remarkable. People don't always need bad intentions for systems to produce unintended consequences. Sometimes good people working toward reasonable goals can collectively create outcomes that nobody originally intended. And perhaps that was Eisenhower's real warning. The next time you hear about a new conflict, a record-breaking defense budget, or another billion-dollar weapons contract, don't ask only who started the war. Ask another question too. How does this system work? Because understanding the world isn't about choosing sides. It is about understanding the forces that shape the choices nations make. If this documentary gave you a new perspective, share it with someone who enjoys asking difficult questions. Because the conversations that matter often begin after the headlines end. If you enjoyed this documentary, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Here on at ManishSirG, Stories That Matter, we don't just report world events. We explore the systems, the history, the economics, and the ideas that quietly shape the future of humanity. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and never stop asking the questions that matter.